Thanks very much. Hope you guys had a great lunch, all energized and ready to go. We're fortunate to have Coach Rob Prebish with us. He coaches at St. Christopher's in Richmond, Virginia. He's been there 11 years now. Holy crap.
21st year teaching, coaching.
Crazy. So just finished his master's in sports psychology, and we were talking out in Vegas, and he's like, anxiety is one of the biggest issues that our kids face, not just on the mat, but in a lot of different life circles. So I asked him to give the presentation, and he was just like jumping on it like
Absolutely.
a rat on a Cheeto, and we're ready to go. So,
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Coach Rob Prebish.
Thank you. I am a high school teacher, so I do move around a lot. I mean, I teach health and PE, but when I'm in the classroom, I actually teach. I don't throw out handouts. But you do have a handout to follow along. I did have a Google Classroom page set up for y'all, but I figured, nah. So we're going to be talking a little bit about anxiety, which is a little story to preface that today. I came up on the train, and so I had to get to the train station in Richmond at 6. On time, great. And as we're going up to D.C., it started slowing down. So I'm checking on my phone, like, okay, stations, and I noticed that the time is getting later and later. We're going to be 20 minutes late, 30 minutes late. And as a person that deals with anxiety on a daily basis, and I like to be places on time, I'm starting to panic. Get to the metro station here about a half an hour late. I'm like, okay, it's noon. I still have an hour. Get an Uber. And he can't find the place, driving around the block. And it was an Uber share, so he had to drop somebody else off first and then drop me off here. And we were like in all these little neighborhoods driving like 10 miles an hour, and I'm just looking at my phone and I'm just stressing out. But fortunately I got here, and I'm excited to be here. Like Mike said, my name is Rob Prebish from Richmond, Virginia. We'll go over the objectives first. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be talking about athletic anxiety as it relates to wrestling. So we're going to define what it is, define where it comes from, recognize how it manifests itself in the athlete, what we notice in how the athlete competes, develop strategies for the coach and the parent to help reduce anxiety in their athlete. We're the front line to help our athletes. And we need to get this information to our parents so that they can reinforce it. And identify how the athlete can manage their anxiety, just like real brief, not going into the deep details that I did with my master's program. So who am I? I'm an assistant coach at St. Christopher's School. This is my 21st year of teaching and coaching. 11th at St. Chris, so I moved around a little bit. I do walk around, I'm sorry. I'm also ADD, so I do move. 2 summers ago, I was in Israel helping to coach the U.S. team at the World Maccabiah Games, and one of our wrestlers just won the U23 weight class. Matt Feinsilver, who's not a Greco wrestler, won the U23 Greco. It blew my mind away. As an athlete, I had some pretty decent success. I've won some national championships, all that good stuff. But now I dedicate my life to my wrestlers in our program in our state. And talking to Mike in Vegas, like I competed at the Veterans Nationals. Just it got me back into shape, gave me a reason to go into the room and train. I enjoy it. And it was the first time that I wrestled where I was completely relaxed on the mat in the lead up to the tournament. There was no anxiety, there was no stress. I was going out there, as all the Penn State wrestlers say, to go out and score points and have fun. That was my only goal, to score points and have fun. And for me, that was never the case. It was never going out to score, well, trying to score a lot of points, but have fun, no. It was not fun. So that's a little bit about me. Need to think about, why do kids pick up the sport? I mean, why would they want to pick somebody up and drop them on their heads? Why do we like this sport so much? Maybe we get into it because we have family or friends that wrestled and we want to follow in their footsteps. It looks like fun. For me, I grew up at Penn State in the early 80s. So I would go to home wrestling matches and watching those guys wrestle. Jimmy Martin, NCAA champion. Carl DeStefanis, NCAA champion. Watching those guys, I just admired them, and it got me involved in the sport. As a coach, we see kids in the hallway at school. Being a phys ed teacher, I see kids in class all the time that look like they could make a wrestler, whether they do it or not. I've actually pulled some kids out when I was a head coach. The best 103 pounder I've coached, I pulled him out of a gym class in 10th grade. Never wrestled before until 10th grade. Was a state qualifier as a senior at 103, so he was the biggest, most mature kid. But in 3 years, he picked up enough skill to do pretty well. So we see kids in school or wherever, and talk to them like, hey, this could be something that could be fun for you. So that's why we wrestle. All right, we know that we're coaches, we're involved with the sport. We know that. What we don't know is about sports anxiety. This isn't just being nervous before a big match. There's those butterflies. This is something that stops us from being truly successful. We can't escape our brain. We cannot escape everything that's going on in here, and it spins out of control. It's a tendency to view competitive situations as threatening and to respond to these situations with apprehension and tension. All right? I mean, that's a nice technical definition. I'm going to try to break it down into easier steps for us to understand. I think we kind of have an idea of what it is. If you have questions along the way, feel free to shout them out. All right, I don't mind. I am a high school teacher. My kids, I ask them to raise their hands. It works for about a week, and then, nah. All right, so anxiety in wrestling, where does it come from? It can come from the athlete. It can come from the parent, the coach, from their peers. From the athlete, realistic versus unrealistic expectations. What's their ultimate goal? They want to be a state champion. They want to be a national champion. For about 90% of our athletes, is that really something that is attainable? So they have an unrealistic expectation. Weight management issues. For me, that was one of my big issues that caused a lot of stress and anxiety in my career, was weight management. I was the worst weight cutter imaginable. I cut a lot of weight the wrong way and somehow made weight over and over again. But it was one of those things that was always in the back of my head. We deal with opponents. I've got a returning state champion next match. Oh, crap, he's really good. We're at the Beast of the East. This is like one of the biggest tournaments in the country. Oh, crap. Injury can cause a lot of anxiety. This past September, I had meniscus surgery on my left knee, and it put me out for 8 weeks. And it really changed, how I was feeling about myself, because I couldn't work out. And there were peaks and valleys in how I was feeling. I'd have really good days and go to PT and just kick butt at it. And then I'd have other days where I'd go to practice and I couldn't do anything. I'd just sit there. And I would go home miserable. Changing in a coach or a club situation, if an athlete is really attached to a kid, or their coach, if that coach leaves, it changes their whole dynamic and approach to training. Parents, we get a lot of our anxiety from our parents. Pressure on the athlete to succeed, preparing the wrestler for opponents. We know these parents, right? We know these parents. Coping with weight management issues, coping with losses. Oftentimes, parents do not cope with their athletes' losses in a positive way. Helicopter parents, controlling every aspect of the child's wrestling. And that can really, really hurt the athlete when the parent is just thinking they're doing what's best for their athlete. They're actually doing the polar opposite. All right. From the coach, wanting a specific wrestler to be the leader, putting the pressure on them. This is your team. You be the leader. Coping with success and failure. Different coaches treat their athletes differently. I'm a more holistic coach. I don't yell and scream at my athletes after they lose a match. The only way I will yell at a wrestler is if they make a fool out of themselves on the mat. If they throw their headgear, pull their singlet off, have words with the official, then we're going to have a problem. But after a loss, I know they're upset. I know they're frustrated. Even if they blew the match, they were winning and got taken down at the end of the third period, I'm not going to yell and scream at them. They're already mad at themselves. All right? Big tournaments. Hey, this is a district tournament. I need everybody in. Everybody's got to work their butt off. And weight management, all right? And from peers, pressure to succeed. A lot of kids have the weight of the world and their school on their shoulders. Smaller schools, that one athlete, that one wrestler who's the best kid on the team, he's going to carry the weight of that school on his shoulders, and that can suck. All right. Yes?
Real quick. So, where does a kid, I had a kid tell me he had a really, really hard time dealing with losses.
Right.
My own kid. And after a couple years, he took a year off in fourth grade. And he told me that year that all of his anxiety came from feeling like everybody in the gym was watching him lose. So like, where is that from self, from peers, from...
I think it's a little bit of everything. This is not something that is cast in stone. It's probably on a continuum. They can come from different aspects, probably from self, probably from peers, maybe parent, maybe coach. A little bit of that, especially if it's a...
Parent or coach, because that was me.
especially if the child is a son or daughter of a successful coach. There's a lot of pressure to be just like dad. So, and we're going to address that. It's a great question. All right, so how does this develop within the wrestler? Okay, the wrestler shows a lot of potential. As they're getting better, there's more pressure on them to succeed at higher levels, whether it's self-placed, whether it's from a parent, whether it's from a coach. Maybe they get their first recruiting text or whatever. There's going to be a lot more pressure the better that they get. Expectations for success from outside influences, their peers, their parents, their coach, that can definitely put stress on the athlete. Focusing solely on success, anything else is failure. That's kind of part of my issue was that, it was only wins that really counted. And even if I won a match, if I didn't do something the right way, I knew I was going to get chewed out. Negative reinforcement from outside influences, especially after losses. That parent that constantly yells at their kid just because they lost a match. I see that a lot at the youth level, and that's why I don't go to a lot of youth tournaments, because it's borderline child abuse. This is like a 7 or 8 year old kid that's learning how to wrestle. Okay, who cares if they win or lose? They're trying, they're getting better, they're improving. Negative reinforcement only if they make a fool out of themselves, throw in their headgear again. Anxiety definitely comes from helicopter parents, controlling them too involved with their career. I love my parents, and we've worked through a lot of these issues. My parents were helicopter parents. Those who I grew up with know that my parents became wrestling officials so they could go to every tournament that I went to. Yeah, the first tournament that my father didn't go to was my junior year in high school. He couldn't get a plane ticket to Israel, and I am so thankful that he couldn't go to Israel with me. But he did make me come back 2 weeks early to go to Iowa for junior nationals, which I really didn't want to do, but again, that's way in the past. Helicopter parents that basically control every aspect of the wrestling. That can really, really cause a lot of frustration and anxiety and limit the wrestler. How does it manifest itself? How does it show itself? Probably the most basic is freezing up in competition at key moments. Wrestling a really good kid and wrestling really well, and then at the end, oops, made a mistake. Mistakes in technique, wrong decisions during those matches, and not being open-minded to correct those mistakes. So coach might say, hey, had you turned the corner here, hands here, you would have finished that shot. The anxious wrestler is going to, whatever, I know what I'm doing. And they're not going to listen. Missing weight or continual issues with weight management. A lot of that might be a cry for, like, I'm tired of doing this, I'm cutting way too much weight, I'm sick of this. So they miss weight. Never winning the big matches. So you'll have that kid that gets on a roll and they're doing pretty well against okay competition, decent competition, but when they start getting to where things matter, sectionals, districts, regions, they don't have it. There's something, well, they do have it, but they don't bring it out with them. Okay? Nerves before and during competition focuses on being nervous and the opponent and not on competing. That was something that I dealt with a lot. The week before a big tournament, that's all I was thinking about was, God, I hope I make weight. And if this guy's in my weight class, I wouldn't sleep. I would lie awake at night just my head just spinning with all these thoughts, and it just clouded everything. Notice in red, outside influences are directly and indirectly influential to the wrestler in a positive or negative way by what they do and say. So we can really help our wrestler deal with these things if we construct what we're doing in a positive way. Okay, again, this is not going back to everybody deserves a trophy. I'm not that kind of coach. No. This is to help get the most out of your athlete that is struggling. And they won't tell you that they're dealing with this anxiety, because if they do that, what does that show? What do they feel? Weakness. Yeah, that's weakness. You know, you're admitting that you're not 100%. Yeah, that's considered weakness. And that's most of the reason why I never mentioned it to my coaches or my parents or anything like that, because it was weakness. The overall results off the mat. Just, depression, frustration with the sport. Why can't I win the big match? I was so close. I was winning and I blew it. Why does it keep happening? Continually lost in their thoughts. Usually negative during training and competition. They're focused on all the negative things instead of practice should be about learning technique, fixing the mistakes, having fun with it. I mean, drilling sucks. It's not fun, but it can be made fun. But if we're focused on all the negative going on in our head, practice drags on and on and on. And especially if you add in the weight management component to it, and a wrestler is focused on, well, I need to lose 4 pounds today. I think I lost 4 pounds. That's what I did in high school and college. I need to get a 5-pound workout in, so I'm going to throw my plastics on. At St. Christopher's, we don't let our kids wear tons of sweats. If our room is cold, they can wear a pair of sweatpants and a sweatshirt or a long sleeve shirt, or they can wear shorts, some combination of that. They're not bundled up like snowmen like we were. They cut their weight on their own. If they need help with weight management, we can help them with that. And I've created diet plans for my athletes. I've gone and worked out with my athletes when they need it. Heck, in Fargo, I will probably be working out with some of the guys getting ready for Greco because they let their weight get out of control after freestyle. That's okay. All right, but we're going to turn that into a good positive so that they can focus on wrestling. Negative relationships with parents and coaches. My coaches didn't do anything for me in high school. I can admit that now. This is 30 years in the past. They were nice guys, but they never corrected the mistakes I made. They never dealt with me in a way that I think would have been more positive. My relationship with my parents was very hot and cold. Because every argument that we had revolved around some aspect of wrestling. It was never like school or screwing around with my friends. It was only about wrestling and predominantly weight loss. And it made a lot of tension. Every argument I had with my parents in high school, weight loss. All right. Some more results you can see: failure to place, qualify for big events. Winning that big match until the end and then choking. And some people just get sick of it and they quit. Taking a year off, or just like, I can't do this anymore. For me, the weight loss, cutting from 140 down to 118 in college every couple of days just took its toll on me, and I was like, I'm done. I told my coach that I was done. He didn't believe me. He made me stand up in front of my college team and explain why I was quitting. It was a hard decision. I don't regret it. I think it really helped kind of get me to where I am today. But at the time, it really did not help the anxiety. All right. So what I've noticed, and I got the first bullet, an assistant principal that I worked with at a previous school used to coach wrestling. And he would come in periodically, watch our matches, and he told me about this first bullet. That when we start coaching, when we're fresh out of school, we tend to coach like we were coached. Our head coach at St. Christopher's wrestled for Blair, for Buxton. So the first 3 or 4 years, he coached like Buxton. Kids at St. Christopher's aren't like Buxton's kids. We're not. So he had to evolve in his coaching, and he has. The expectations are still there. The technique is still very high level. But Buxton has a unique way of dealing with his kids. And I think every coach has to find their unique way. What we can do is focus on continual improvement in wrestling. Win or lose, there's always going to be things that we need to fix. You know, the way that I deal with the kids when they come off the mat, like, hey, good job with A, B, and C. We need to fix, D and E, and make sure that we're doing this at the end. So they're getting the things that they did good, the things that they need to fix, and if we want to sit down and watch film on it so they can see it, that's great. When they lose, you get 5 minutes to be upset, and then you got to move on because you're going to have another match. Focus on training and the process of preparation out of performance. Back when we wrestled, it was all about performance. It was always outcome-based. Now I think a lot of coaches are focusing on the journey, the preparation. And for me, I think the journey should be kind of fun. That preparation should be kind of fun. And this is the second to last bullet's kind of difficult, especially if it's something that we're not comfortable with. Keeping an open line of communication with the athlete. And the athlete has to be open with you. So you have to build a relationship with your athletes that they know that they can talk to you about anything. I know that my wrestlers, if they're struggling with something, that we can sit down and we can talk. And I've gotten phone calls like at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, Coach, I need to talk. Like, all right, I'll be right over. Let's go to Starbucks, and let's talk. What's going on? And for them, just to have somebody that they can talk to openly and honestly helps. And I'm open and honest with them. Sometimes they don't like what I have to say because it's the truth, and they have to look hard at themselves and fix something, but they appreciate it in the long run. And a positive tone. You can be positive when you're coping with a loss, all right? You can turn that around and kind of be positive. Like, hey, the effort was really there. You just felt you got to push a little bit harder. We need to make sure that we're finishing those shots. That, when we're on the bottom, that we need to win that whistle start and get to our feet. Okay, this is stuff that you can do. And give them that positive attitude instead of like, why didn't you get out? You had 30 seconds to get out and you didn't move. Is that going to make the kid feel any better? No. If anything, they're going to shut down. Like, hey, you had 30 seconds. Really need to be more active in those 30 seconds. And that ride out, you've got to be going. And we know that you have it in you. So turning that negative into a positive and not making it seem like we're just like, oh, it's okay, Billy. No. I mean, yeah, they lost and we're upset. But we can counsel them in a more positive way. Be supportive. A lot of coaches think, anxiety, you're just nervous. Just relax, man. You're fine. Listen to some music. You're fine. We need to be supportive and work with the wrestler no matter how small we think the problem is. If it's a problem to the wrestler, it's a problem for you as the coach. So we need to make sure that we are addressing that problem in a constructive way, so that they know that we're on their side. I didn't know if my high school coaches were on my side or not. Instill the warrior mentality in the wrestler, and that comes with your preparation, battling to the end. I would rather see one of my wrestlers go out and battle like crazy and lose the match than hang on for dear life in the third period and stall their butt off and win by 1 point. I want to see them going after it, so we can instill that warrior mentality. And that comes with the way that we run our workouts and the way that we approach preparation. Be realistic with the wrestler and their ability and their potential. We have to be honest with them. If they're a 500 wrestler, then they're going to be a 500 wrestler, and we need to make the best of their ability. Those 500 or under wrestlers tend to be the guys that are going to work their butt off for you. Those are your utility men. Those are the kids that help build programs. Focus on effort and correct the lack of effort. I would rather see effort in a loss than lack of effort in a win. All right? Again, none of this means you can't be tough on them. All right? But we need to keep things in perspective. Motivate them. Set your expectations for the wrestler at the beginning of the season. And adopt strategies to correct when needed. Does anybody have any questions? I tend to ramble. I'm sorry. Yes.
Back on be supportive.
Mm-hmm.
I see a kid that's nervous. The first thing that comes to your head is just like, you do with your spouse or significant other. you try to soothe them
Yeah.
calmly.
Yeah.
And that's probably the last thing they want to hear.
Yep.
Is me saying it's fine, it's okay, because like you said, it's clearly not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What strategies are there? What do you say?
First, and I've got it. One of our seniors is this guy. You know, if he's really nervous, I just walk up to him like, take a deep breath, hold it, blow it out. Look, relax and let's have fun. I'll tell them a joke. You know, I'll get their mind off of the nerves, and I'll joke around with them a little bit, and get that helps them to relax. Some kids, you know, you need to give them a little cussing at. You know, you find out as you learn your wrestlers, you find out what their triggers are. You know, for this, you know, a guy that's really, really nervous, take a deep breath, man. It's gonna be fine. All right, lighten the mood up, and just start talking about that. Get their mind off of that stressor, and that tends to work. You know, I think it's been helpful. All right. Again, you know, a lot of this is repeat, keeping things in perspective, process over performance goals, reduce the pressure from outside influence. If the parents are all on their kid about winning and winning and winning, as a coach, like, hey, we need to sit down and let's relax a little bit with this. It's gonna happen. Relax. Let me be the coach, you be the parent. Okay, and that's the next point. Parents be parents, not coaches. Okay? We don't allow parents during our club workouts. We don't allow parents in the practice room. And it's been great because, you know, if the parent is in the room, what's the kid going to be focused on? Yeah. Like if I got taken down in practice and my dad was in there, and I'm looking at my dad and he's just shaking his head and I'm done. Practice is done for me. So we keep the parent out of the room, and they don't come up during the season or whatever. I don't want them standing behind me, coaching over me. Want them in the stands. And this year at National Preps, our kids and our parents, usually we sit in different places. Our kids and our parents decided to sit together during the first round. And we wrestled like crap. And we brought the team down and basically read them the riot act. Like the effort was not there. You know, we won matches and just looked like garbage. We lost matches that we should have won. And we're like, look, we need to be just us wrestlers. We can't be around the parents. They're distracting you. So we found one of the locker rooms right across from where Blair sits, and we took over a locker room. And the next round, the kids were more relaxed, and their wrestling picked up. So keeping the kids, you know, the kids can go talk to the parents after the match, but then come back with the team. All right, let the parents enjoy the tournament as parents, not as an extra coach. Our best kid, Jackson Turley, is coming up here to Rutgers next year. His dad is a club coach down our way, and he sits in the very top row of the bleachers. He doesn't talk to Jackson during the tournament, maybe at the beginning and the end. He stays up there because he knows what's best for Jackson. So I think more parents, it's going to be hard for them because they want to control every aspect of their kid. It's hard for them to let go and just be a parent. As a high school coach, it's something that we really push hard. Just be their parent. You know, give them a pat on the back after a match. You know, don't chew them out about the finish on that single that they blew. All right, they don't need that. They're going to get that from us. We're going to fix that. We need to be the positive role model. All right. And if they're showing negative behaviors, poor sportsmanship, well, there's always that wrestler that whenever they lose a match, they're slamming their headgear down. We've pulled some of our best guys and made them sit for a dual tournament because they threw their headgear. You know, and these are guys that were National Prep All-Americans that were throwing temper tantrums, so we sat them. We have no time, no place for that. And it sends a message to the rest of the kids that, you know, sportsmanship is important. If you're not going to shake the coach's hand, you're not wrestling. You know, if you're going to argue with the referee, get off the mat. You're done. Work on goal setting. All right, these are things that these are wrestling-centered treatments. And this is just like the tip of the iceberg. You know, we could talk. I took an entire class in my master's program about dealing, you know, with relaxation techniques. All right, process goal setting. Focus on the process rather than a performance outcome. So it's great to have that goal of wanting to be a state champion, all right? But how are we going to get there? We have to have the process to have the performance. And if we focus solely on the performance, the process is completely lost. They're going to do whatever they have to do to try and get that performance goal. And they're going to miss steps, they're going to take shortcuts, and oftentimes they're not going to have that performance outcome. So setting those process goals leading to their performance is going to help. For the athlete, staying positive and keeping things in perspective. It's not the end of the world. Okay? Life goes on after the tournament. It's okay. You have another match. You live to fight another day. I use that expression a lot at the end of a tournament. If it didn't go out, look, we've got next week. You're going to live to fight another day. This week we're going to focus on those mistakes that we made, so when we come back here, you're that much better. Things like Jacobson's progressive relaxation, where we focus on relaxing specific muscle groups, and it really kind of tunes us into ourself to kind of center and allow us to take that deep breath and just kind of let all the tension go. Breathing techniques, I use that a lot. Like if I start to feel a little stressed, I'll just kind of pause, take a deep breath, and just start blow out the air slowly and let that tension go. I talk to myself a lot. Sometimes I answer.
Hey, talking to yourself's okay as long as you don't get into an argument.
I've gotten in arguments.
Or ask yourself if you just seconds you want.
Exactly. Self-talk, very, very important in the training process. Self-talk as in, okay, head outside single, close your eyes, go through your steps of the head outside single, talk to yourself. Having little mantras, little sayings, like if you're starting to get stressed out. For me, it's kind of like, relax, you're okay, and just kind of repeat it, and it allows the tension to disappear. Journaling. Having your kids write, every day after practice when they get home, their thoughts and feelings, so they can see if patterns are developing, how they're dealing with them. Music. A lot of kids like to listen to music before they compete. So do I. I don't like listening to what we would do when we were wrestling. We'd listen to heavy metal or something to get us really fired up. It has to be the opposite. If we want to wrestle relaxed, kind of something very, very just kind of, for me, it was the Grateful Dead and Bob Marley, a little Pink Floyd. And y'all are thinking like, what, did you fall asleep before your match? No, it just allowed me to just kind of just relax and enjoy the moment. I listen to a lot of classical music before I compete. Now, when I'm training, that's when we've got Rage Against the Machine going on in the room, and we've got a lot of high-paced stuff to get your heart rate up. But when it's me preparing to step out there against my opponent, I need to be focused and relaxed, and that's what works for me. And the hardest thing for your athlete is communication. Letting them know that it's okay to talk, that it's okay to have these feelings. It's normal to have anxiety. It's not normal to keep it all bottled up and not do anything about it. Okay, that's the end result is they're not going to compete as well as they could. They're not going to enjoy it as much as they could. All right, so encourage them to communicate with outside influences. If it's not something that you can do, maybe you have an assistant coach that can do that. Maybe you can refer them to guidance at school or a sports psychologist if there's one around. I know we don't all have that, but giving them places that they can go to talk about this, and encouraging our parents to start opening a dialogue, like real talk with our kids, and our kids being able to talk openly and freely. Like if your dad is driving you nuts, Dad, you need to back off because when you come in the practice room, I can't focus. But then Dad has to understand that and respect it, and maybe take a step back. It's difficult because, Dad has all the control and all the power from this point, back. But maybe if son tells Dad that, look, you really are just not helping me. It really stresses me out when you're in the room or you're behind coach. I just need you to take a step back and be honest with it. If it's something that if they're a good parent, they're going to understand that and they're going to think I need to do what's best for my kid. And hopefully they'll take that step back.
So Rob, what do you do if the parent doesn't?
That's when the coach can step in, and Jatomer's better at this than I am because he's pretty blunt. You know, Mr. Smith, you need to go sit. You're not a coach. You're not on our staff. You know, let us coach, and you just be a parent. And the parent's going to be a little frustrated and upset, but maybe that's the way they need to hear it. You know. I try to use the soft, soothing tone, and it doesn't really work. You know, with an overbearing parent, you just have to be blunt. Get out of the room. You know, you're not supposed to be in the room. No parents in the room. And thank God between our 3 coaches on our high school team, I'm kind of the empathetic one. Our head coach is kind of the aggressive one, and the other assistant coach is like kind of in the middle. So we make the perfect coach, because he can kind of go back and forth between being empathetic and a hard ass, whereas I'm at one end and our head coach is at the other. So we're very fortunate. If you don't have that, you know, you're going to have to find it to bring that out just for a little bit so you can get the best out of your kid and make them feel better. Again, parents should be, coaches should be the ones to help eliminate anxiety. They shouldn't be the cause. There's no need to yell and berate the wrestler after a loss. We keep talking about this. Kid's already upset. You know, the biggest mistake that a parent and a coach can make after a loss is just starting to yell at their kid. They're already mad, and the kid's probably going to say or do something that they regret. You know, all the times that I cussed at my dad after a loss didn't go over well. You know, or telling my coach to go shove it. You know, it doesn't work. You know, give the kid their 5 minutes. You know, 5 minutes to be upset after a loss and then move on. If I had 5 minutes just to kind of get my head together, yes, I know I blew it. I know I gave up a takedown with 10 seconds left. I get that. Then when I come back to you, I'm probably going to be more receptive to what you have to say. All right? Remember the mission as a coach? Always explain the why we do something. You know, why are we doing this workout? Why are we focusing on just this little thing with a double leg? You know, always explaining the why. Parents can help and coaches can teach the wrestler to own their actions, good or bad. All right? A lot of times, who does the kid blame for a loss? The ref. I got screwed. I had a takedown. They didn't give it to me. They blame their coach. Coach, you told me to take bottom and I got ridden out. They don't blame themselves. So we need to teach the wrestler to own their actions. For me, I keep things light, during tournaments and high stress environments, just to kind of reduce that anxiety, bring a little levity to the situation. You know, I still want my wrestlers to do the best that they can, but if they kind of, have that moment where they can laugh and look at me and kind of like shake their head like, you're just weird. It gets them to just kind of relax for that moment. Empathetic, and be proud of your athlete. You know, tell them that you're proud of them. It doesn't have to be the guy who wins the state championship that you're proud of. It could be the kid that came out and is like the most non-athletic kid you've ever seen, but they stick with it. We had a kid graduate this year. His nickname was Wolverine, and he was like the least athletic kid in a very non-athletic school. But he stuck with it for 4 years. And I would have to, like when he was a freshman, I would have to work out with him because nobody wanted to drill with him. This guy was stiff as a board. And he would fight you at every second. Like, we're drilling and he's just trying to down block and put your face through the mat. And it was really frustrating early on. But the kid stuck with it because the coaches took an interest in him, the kids took an interest in him, and this was like a life-changing thing for him. I mean, he was never a 500 wrestler, but he stuck with it, and it kind of became his identity. And I'm proud of the kid. He's going to college next year, and he's a completely different kid than when he walked in 4 years ago. That's success, don't you think? Yeah. I've already talked about the blame game. Communicate. Allow the wrestler to communicate their frustrations. If they're a little upset, give them some time to. But if it starts getting out of control, we need to be able to reel them back in. Redirect negativity. Help the wrestler with those coping mechanisms for anxiety. Teach them how to do the breathing. Teach them how to do progressive relaxation, self-talk, visualization. All right, parents, be a spectator. I keep bringing that up. I think like a lot of the anxiety comes from our families. You know, I'm sure if you ask a lot of guys who've wrestled a long time, that if their parents were really involved, it was really stressful. You get to a point where you need to just be a parent. Let somebody else coach your kids. What I do at the end of a season or an end of a career with guys, with my seniors, did you give it your best effort? If you can look me square in the face and with all honesty that you gave it your 100% best effort, then I accept that. If they can't, the answer is no, then like, well, what could you have done differently? So they're learning how to figure things out a little bit, all right? I would love to have parents to say, like, hey, have fun out there. I'm proud of you. Just enjoy it out there instead of, you need to go out and win this match. You need to pin this kid. You need to win states. No, just go out and wrestle. Everything else will take care of itself. And if we allow the wrestler to manage their anxiety, if we acknowledge it and manage it, you're going to see a wrestler that's much more relaxed during competition. They're not stressed out. They're not warming up 2 hours before their match. That's what I would do. Is I would wind up, and I was a lightweight. I would start warming up like halfway through the round before mine, and by the time I'd get on the mat, I was just tired from warming up. Weight management becomes secondary. It's not the primary source for training. It's going to build confidence. They're allowed to focus on wrestling, not the what ifs. They become less afraid. They're going to try more. They're going to go for it. And they're less afraid after matches. When they lose, they're like, all right, yeah, I made a mistake. I took a shot and he had a great down block and got behind me. Now I'm going to work on finishing it better. It becomes fun for them. And they're going to realize when it becomes fun, they're going to start to open up a little more and have a blast. They're going to try things. There were moments where I did have fun. And it was when I was wrestling wide open, just having a good time with it. Got into a groove. The wrestler is going to be able to compete in a state of here and now, right in the moment. Wrestling right in this moment, not what if I do this or what if he does that. It's right here, right now. They're going to start winning big matches, and eventually their relationship with their family is going to get better because everybody's going to start relaxing a little bit. Parents are going to be parents. They're going to be proud of their kid. Their lives do not depend on whether Billy wins or loses. They're more concerned with Billy enjoying it and growing from it. All right, any questions?
So I'm going to give you a scenario. I had a wrestler, and the wrestler was a very physical wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
So when he would have big matches and he'd get himself amped up in the match because he was really feeling it,
right.
and saying I gotta get this match done, I gotta get this match won, a good opponent. He'd get called for a slam, especially in folk style. He'd get called for a slam, and then it started his mental wheel of, oh crap, this is where it starts to go bad for me. What do you do, or how do you help them in a match like that where you need to try to give them, but I can't actually go out there and talk to them. I got to be able to do something quick or simple and help them try to reset.
It could be something like, I use Jackson Turley a lot as an example, because sometimes like when Jackson would get out of control early on in his career, he's going to throw a punch at you, or he's going to shove you, or he's going to talk to the referee. Something as simple as bring it down, and we worked at it because for a while, I would start doing that and he would get mad at me. I'm like, Jackson, I'm on your side. I'm trying to get you to calm down. So we worked out a system when he started getting amped up, and I would realize it. That's the only reason I was in his corner, is to kind of manage behavior. Just like, Jackson. Or I would smile at him and give him just like a goofy smile, and then he'd be like, all right, cool. So find out something that you and the athlete have as your way of reeling them back in,
Is there something that you could tell, or something that he can train himself or she can train herself into to recognize that and try to help themselves? Because his problem was he just started to believe that he was going to lose that match.
Right.
And that's where it just started the downward spiral where it
just
fulfilled itself.
Just kind of focusing on, instead of getting amped up and like, I got to win, relax and just go wrestle. Just relax and wrestle. You don't need to be amped up and ready to kill somebody, because that's when you invariably will slam somebody. So it's training yourself to be ready and be prepared for the match without getting overly aroused for it and getting out of control. So, working with the athlete, like, okay, well, now you're starting to get amped up. All right, we need to reel it back in. Just kind of work on him, like, in practice situations, kind of get him to that point where he's getting ready to get really revved up. I'm like, okay, now we're going to take a step back and slow it down. And then he'll be able to train it into their match situation over time. It takes practice. It's a good question. Any other questions? All right, the last three things that I have are just kind of scenarios that with the people at your table, just kind of, look at, talk about, come up with some ideas, things like that. All right, so the first scenario, over the course of a high school season, you notice that one of your wrestlers is constantly losing to opponents they feel are better than them, all right? Just based on their record, or that they were a returning state qualifier or a regional place winner. But as the coach, you've seen this kid practice, and you've seen them wrestle, and you know that they are better than what they're showing. How can you help your wrestler get over that hump of losing to guys that have better records?
I tell my kids you're not allowed to look at the bracket.
Yeah. Who cares who you're wrestling?
I have kids all the time. They'll ask me, because they know I know virtually anybody who's any good in a 3-4 county radius.
Yeah.
Oh, coach, you know this guy? Have you ever seen this kid wrestle before? Nope, I have no idea who he is. I know he took second in PJWs last year, but I'm not going to tell you that.
Yeah. Yep. Anyone else?
Remind them of past successes. Remember last year you were all upset or nervous about this particular match. Look how you did. Maybe it wasn't the kid that he's wrestling now, but it's like the idea of, you got a shot at this, and we start every match 0-0.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're resetting.
That's a really good point.
I find also, if a kid knows they're going to wrestle someone that's so-called better than them, they tend not to warm up as hard. So if we stress warming up, I find that I have a better advantage of winning those matches.
Go here and then here.
I'll share a story with you. We have a 14-year-old who is an outstanding wrestler, dominant. There's a 12-year-old. Our 14-year-old beats the 12-year-old in the room like a drum. So he goes to a tournament. He wrestles a 2-time state champ who was a finalist, 3-time finalist, and the 2-time state champ finalist beats him. And he beats him pretty handily. So about 3 tournaments later, the 12-year-old goes in the tournament to wrestle the same state champion that beat our 14-year-old, and our 12-year-old goes out there with the mentality like, oh, I don't care, and I don't care who it is, I'm going to beat him. He wrestles hard and he beats the state champ. So then the 14-year-old who beats the 12-year-old who lost to the opponent is frustrated and angry because he realizes, oh, I let the title win the match and not doing my wrestling.
Exactly.
Very interesting.
Exactly.
Instead of focusing on winning versus losing that match, maybe focusing on the processes that they have to execute to win that match.
Good. Anyone else?
Well, to that point there, and I've had, was that you? Mm-hmm. I've had conversations with some of the guys I coach with about that, because I've done it in the past to say to a kid, all right, look, this could be a tough match. This is what you have to do to win. You gotta, whatever, get the right elbow down because he's gonna come in and under, whatever it is. And I've sort of kind of changed that thinking over the years, because then you see your kid go out and wrestle a style he's not used to wrestling, and they're probably thinking, well, coach doesn't think I have any shot at beating him wrestling my style, so I got to do all these other things not to get my butt kicked. So
what we do, like when we get in a situation where we've got a really good kid that we can scout with film, we're watching his tendencies, but we're also watching what we can do by controlling his hand to get to our offense, and really stressing that with the athlete rather than like, okay, he's got a great high crotch, you got to control that shooting hand, because then the kid's going to be on the defense trying. Whereas we're like, okay, you need to control his left hand so we can get him to step. Boom, you're in on your shot. So we're trying to turn that into a positive thing, getting them to their offense. If he's a leg rider, we're like, okay, make sure boots coming in, we can catch, and we got to get hips out and focus on that. Those little things. And during the match, we're constantly coaching them up with those things, and really reinforcing it. Like if we need to control the hand, let's go, get back on the hand. You need to get back on the wrist, boom, that reels them back in. So all good stuff. All right. This is probably, we all have this. Your best wrestlers' parents are overly involved in their athlete's career, and they're always in the practice room during practice, coaching over you and your staff, and overly critical of their athlete when they win or lose. The involvement is having a negative impact on your wrestler. They are easily agitated, stressed out, and worry too much about big events, and it's starting to show. How can you help the wrestler? What can we do to solve this dilemma? Every one of us in our club or our team probably have a parent like this. What do we do? What would you do?
Well, I don't know how to answer the whole thing, but what I'd like to do at the beginning of the season is I say to the whole program, all the parents, look, if you're a mother or father that has a background in wrestling, we would love it and are practically begging you to please come help coach. Because the more parents knowledge that we have helping coach, the better off we are. There are some parents that either don't want to, don't have the time. I had one guy say to me, look, I would love to, but I'm not a very good coach because I get too emotional. Okay, I get it. So then the next step is, when we coach your kids, anybody on the staff with our shirt on is coaching your kids, we don't want you there. We don't want you watching your kid, but if you want to coach your kid, that's fine with us. Just let us know. We'll go somewhere else, and you can coach. And I've never had a parent take me up on that. So, and then we have certain rules about in the room. Really, really young kids. Sometimes it's better to just have the parents there, especially if they're acting up. You can say, "Hey, time to go sit with mom or dad,"
Right.
Or they get hurt, mom and dad's there to see what happened, and they're not questioning. It's more like to cover our butts. The older kids, we say when we drop that divider to the parents in the big room, and we're on the other side, we don't want to see a parent on the other side of the divider. So those rules help. Now, when we were talking the second part of that, we've got a couple kids on our team that are really, really, really good kids. And dad is just, there's two of them, way too involved. Mm-hmm. To the point where it is causing issues. And, one of them is easy to talk to. It just seems like he can't help himself. He does try.
Right.
During matches, he'll go on the other side and film, but he's still like, and the other dad, he'll be right behind me. This year at PJW, I'd turn around and say to him, leave. The match hasn't even started yet, and your
Right.
kid has looked over at you 7 times. Just go walk.
That's got to be an intervention where you sit down with the kid and the parent. And I know with the PJWs, it's a young age group, and the kid's probably not going to be as honest as they should be,
Right.
because, they're still really young kids.
I think with older kids, a couple of middle school kids that I coached when they were younger, I'm still pretty close with, and we overlap practices.
Right.
I've said to them, if you want me to have a conversation with dad, let me know.
Yeah.
Or, if it's really bothering you that much, maybe you just say to your dad, hey dad, I really like just these guys to coach me during the matches. But I'll tell you, it takes a lot of, for a middle school kid or even a high school kid to look at their parent and say, I don't want you there.
Yeah.
Go sit over there somewhere. So I think it falls on our shoulders to sit down with the parent and say, time out, this isn't working.
Right.
I've had to deal with this in 2 different areas. When coaching a high school team, the school that I coached at did not have a open or closed practice ruling, so that there was parents that would come in if they weren't working or whatever. They would come in and watch practice. And one of the parents, we had to go to the athletic director for them to come in and remove them. Whereas with my club, I'm a USA Wrestling chartered club. Every wrestler is a USA athlete. in order to be in that room, she brought it up, and I'm like, yeah, that is what I do. In order to be in that room, you need to be a certified coach. Parent, you're not certified, please leave. And if they're in the room and they're not causing a problem, I have no problem with it. But if they start being a coach, trying to coach their kid, you're not a coach, please leave. If you need to take your kid with you, that's fine, but you are causing a disruption and preventing me from teaching every other kid in here that's paying me to teach their kids. That's a problem.
Absolutely. Anyone else?
I mean, this is one of those issues that, it's hard to address, especially if the athlete's younger, because they're not going to voice what they really want because they probably don't know exactly what they really want. Yeah, or afraid. And even in high school, I think, we get to a point where some kids are afraid to voice their opinion, and we have to encourage them that their voice needs to be heard. That it's okay to let this stuff, talk about what parents can do to help their kid reach their goals.
I don't want to belabor this one, but on the high school example, we got a high school kid whose parent came to our head coach and said, well, so our plan for next year is, whatever. And Dave says, well, don't you think we as a staff should be involved in that plan?
Yeah.
And this is a parent that has over the last couple of years slowly ramped up their helicoptering, hovering, whatever you want to call it. And it's, the wrestler's going to be a senior, and right now we're butting heads, and it's not that Dave or anybody else on the staff disagrees so much with most of it.
Just want to be in part of it.
Yeah, it's because we do a lot of stuff at the school. We're trying to do a lot of different things, and we don't want it to be seen as contrary.
Right.
Number one, number two, we just want to know. So those conversations, I don't know how you have them, especially when the parent's doing it and you don't even know they're doing it until it's done.
Yeah.
That's something like when they mention here's what we're thinking. As the coaches of the program, need to let the parent know this is what we're doing for our whole thing, or this is what the program goal, and this is what the program's going to focus on. If they want to do that outside with their club coach or with whomever, great. But when they're in our room, they're doing our system or our stuff. And if they're not willing to do that, then there's a problem. I'm at a private school, and if there's a problem in that situation, kids will and parents will decide to maybe, go somewhere else. Public school kind of hard to do, depending on what state you're from. But it's got to be something that, as a coach, we're not just coaching one kid. You're coaching everybody. And if you're doing, if you're trying to build a program, you probably have a system in place that you believe in, that you want your kids to be able to do A, B, and C. And then if dad wants Billy to do D, E, and F, well, that's got to be on their own time, because with 30 other kids, you got to focus on the group instead of the one. And that's hard to do, but at the same time, it's got to be done, if you want your program to develop. So. Does anybody have any other comments, questions, concerns? Did I bore you all? Okay, cool. Well, thanks for coming in, for letting me come in. Hopefully, you guys are getting a lot of good stuff from all these wonderful coaches with USA Wrestling. Eventually, I'll be in your shoes and step up and do this too. So, thanks for everything, guys. Appreciate it.